Welcome back to the Talk Shop Podcast with your host Richie Tavaki, and I'm here with my friend at this time and audio engineer and actually a lot of things right now, Luke Trusty. How's it going, man?
Hey, Richie. Good to hear from you, man.
It is. It's stuff. I mean, so like we've known each other for probably like midway through COVID, and then we
Oh,
just
yeah.
recently started chatting back and forth. And you, so before we get into all of that, okay, I should ask you, what game are you playing or looking forward to playing?
Oh, right now it's been a combination of Destiny 2. I got
Mm-hmm.
a longtime gaming friend that got into it recently, and he's like, hey. So I've been pulled back into that.
Mm-hmm.
And a little bit of Starship Troopers, Extermination.
Nice,
Yeah, that's
nice,
been a lot of
nice. So yeah, I've heard a bit about it, and I was like, hey, people are liking it. That's good. And
Yeah,
then,
it's a fun game. I used to do a lot of tactical shooters with retired vets.
oh, nice.
And so, yeah, we kind of fell out of contact for a couple years because the games we're playing kind of died off.
Mm-hmm.
And then somebody's like, hey, this just kind of like shadow dropped. And next thing you know, there's like 15 of us back in the mix of it again. So it's been a lot of fun.
That's good. Okay, so now that we got video games out the way, let's talk shop.
Sure.
Tell us about yourself. What is it that you do? You're not just a voice actor, but you've also made your own content, and which we will talk about, which we will dive in later. You were nominated for some of that content. But tell us what you do.
It's honestly, it's crazy. I do writing, so I'm a writer. I can happily add, director to that with, the series I'll talk about shortly. I'm a casting director for a startup company right now that focuses on short form narration. Um, I'm a writer. I'm an audio engineer. I, mix my own music and stuff too. It's really hard to say that I just do one thing because I try to be able to do, for me, my philosophy is if you want to understand how to do incredibly well in a business, try to understand all the different angles of the business instead of just the one you want to do. So it's like, I really love voiceover. I've wanted to do voiceover since I was a kid. It wasn't until COVID hit that that really became a possibility because I grew up in the middle of Missouri, like in a town of 1,065 people. Like voiceover had always been a pipe dream, but then COVID hit and that changed. Then I was like, okay, cool. So I stand a chance. I can do voiceover now. I can learn it. And at that point in time, I had probably already been experimenting with making my own music like off and on again casually for like the better part of a decade,
Right,
just mixing it just to have fun with it.
right.
Um I've always, been a creative writer since I was younger. So I've always kind of cultivated that skill. And then I first got into this and I had only been doing this and studying for probably 3 months, I think. And I had an opportunity to audition for a commercial, which I was like, "Oh, okay, really nervous as anybody would be in that situation for the first time. And I did the commercial, I did the audition, and I sent it off. And then the person came back and said, "Hey, they really like your sound. They just want to know if you can, normalize it a little bit." And I'm using Audacity at this point. I've been using Audacity for a month, and I'm like, uh what? They're like, yeah, can you normalize it to -10? I'm like, wow, sure, okay. And they're like, yeah, they like it loud. And in my head, I'm like, oh my lord, what is this? How do I do it? How do I make this work? And the quality was not the best, as you can imagine.
Oh man, that reminds me of my first voice job. I was working for a nonprofit, or I was working for a foundation, and they're like, "Hey, can you record an audiobook?" I was like, "Yeah, sure." And I just started getting into the voiceover game, and I bought a mic, which was a Blue Yeti, and then I bought a stand so it looked quote unquote professional, but I had no sound treating, so when I recorded it, all you hear is this, and I sent it to them. I was like, "Are you sure this is good?" They're like, yeah, yeah, sure. I was like, oh god. I was like, I don't know what I'm missing. So, but
And
no.
you've got that like that nice lower register too, and a
Mm-hmm.
little bit of boom and echo in your voice. So I
Mm-hmm.
can't even imagine.
Yeah, it was just like it's because it was on safety too. It was like things to do to
Oh,
not get safety.
Oh
shit.
boy.
I was like, oh god, dude. So, but no, I totally relate. And then obviously I fixed it later and in contact, and I was like, you guys want me to redo this? I got the setup and everything. So,
Well,
but no,
that was kind of me in that situation. That was kind of the impetus. I was
hmm
like, I got caught. I felt like I was caught with, I got caught with my pants down. I was deer in headlights, and I just said to myself, okay, like if I really want to do this professionally and I really want to be good at this, how do I make sure that I don't get myself into this situation again? So I was like, okay, I know there's a ton of videos out there, other people I can talk to. So I started watching videos. It was around that time that Audacity was purchased by somebody else, and that's when they came out and said, "Yeah, we're going to start doing data collection."
yeah,
And
that didn't go over
everybody's
well.
right, and everybody's like, "No, no, no, no!" Like huge red flag. And I'm like, "Okay, well that sucks." Thankfully, I haven't learned very much in Audacity. What's a professional standard that people use? And that's where I came across Reaper,
Right.
and I dove headfirst into Reaper and have been learning about Reaper. And it started getting to a point where I was like, I want to kind of do this to my voice. I want to do that to my voice. There's all these settings, there's all these buttons, there's all this stuff. What does it do? Like, it has to do something. And so I just started playing around. I
hmm
started playing around with it. I started tinkering. I started watching, Kenny Joya. If you ever have an opportunity to watch his videos on Reaper, if you're just getting started, do it.
That's good to know. Thank you.
The guy's a professional audio engineer. He's worked across the board and everything for like the last 10, 20 years. And his tutorials are really nice, really simple, really easy to follow. Um, so a lot of the stuff that I've learned how to do from Reaper has been from watching a lot of his tutorial.
Right.
So
That's
it's
good
just
too.
an amazing resource, and it's free. It doesn't cost you anything either. Just a little bit of time and kind of scratching your head a little bit. And
hmm
there were times where I was, hitting my computer with the stick trying to figure it out. It works for Kenny. Why doesn't it work for me?
It's like, damn
Oh,
it,
right.
work.
Exactly. Oh, wait, because he clicked this one button that I didn't click. Oops, that's on me. Uh, but yeah, that's kind of how I got into the engineering game. And then I've just really, honestly, I've pursued that as much as I've pursued VO. Because
Right.
in my mind, my philosophy, the two are so closely interlinked now, especially because of home studios and COVID,
hmm
that you really, if you're not, and let's be real, like even everybody on the pro circuit, a lot of the money that VO make comes from narration,
Right.
specifically like e-learning modules, like
hmm
in the professional circuit. Like sure, there are some amazing talents out there that just do nothing but video games and anime and cons, but a lot of where our money comes from is from narration,
Right.
and so you're not going to get to send your narration to a studio and have somebody clean it up. You're going to do your narration, and then you're going to have to clean it up yourself and figure out how to make it sound good.
Right.
And so for me, I was like, oh, this really is like, for certain aspects of this business, it's like a start to finish product delivery system.
hmm
And I was just like, yeah, I don't want to be bad at that.
Now that's definitely a good way to look at it because, like you said, you have e-learning and a lot of those,
Oh, yeah.
especially in the corporate world, because then you dump in commercials with that too, and that's pulling in a
Yeah.
lot of money. They pay big money for commercials, and it's really like you said, it brings in a lot of money. And at the same time, for people around like my generation, and one of the things I like to cover on the channel is not to pigeonhole yourself just to animation in video games
Yeah.
because like that's the last thing you're probably going to end up touching. And the times you hear people
Yeah.
say, "Oh, that's where I started," it's there's probably a million different possibilities that can happen when you decide to get into any career. And one of those
Yeah.
possibilities being I got into my first job was on a union video game for a AAA title like Metal Gear Solid 3. Okay, that's completely possible, but at the same time, a meteor could hit us the next day. Is it likely? Not really.
Yeah, like it's one of those situations where, in every instance there's an outlier.
hmm
And I will certainly never ever begrudge anybody that, either that has enough fortune or skill or look or whatever you want to call it, good luck rather.
Mm-hmm.
to get into that situation, because that's amazing, and I will always celebrate all of our fellow voice actors that get to do that. Yeah, that's kind of the exception to the rule for a
Mm-hmm.
lot of this.
Time and chance happens to everyone.
Yeah,
It's,
no, exactly.
mm-hmm.
One of the biggest things I've learned, and I've honestly just really have really taken it to heart this year, was the power of yes.
Right.
I've been doing this since the end of I first started taking, classes with Blumbox, like Steve Bloom's online courses. That's how you and I met, actually.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. That is.
Um, and I think I did like every single module he had available before I even started doing workout rooms
Right.
on the Discord. And one of the things that everybody has always said is like, the power of yes, the power of yes, power of yes. I think my first year I made, I think, a whole $30
Mm-hmm.
doing voiceover. Last year I think I made a whopping 15.
Mm-hmm.
Like there was that was not a really good solid, return on investment
Right.
ratio the last 2 years. And so earlier this year I had an opportunity to do short form narration.
Right.
And everybody, a lot of people, not everybody, but a lot of people will say, don't do it. It's like a hamster wheel. You'll get stuck.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, yeah, but
Mm-hmm.
necessity, right? And then
Yep.
I got to
Necessity.
thinking about it. It's like, how many even like on camera actors and how many voice actors do we know that are like, yeah, my big break came when I was out of money and I didn't have a job and I had to do something
Mm-hmm.
to survive. And that was really me. I was like, I gave myself a cutoff date. I was like, if I'm passionate about my craft, I love my craft, I love what I want to do, but I need to start looking at it objectively as a business as well. Otherwise, I'm just going to treat the hobby. I'm not going to do anything with it.
Right.
And so I started saying yes to stuff. It's like, hey, this came up, sure, I'll do it. Hey, this came up, sure, absolutely, I'll do it. Hey, this came up, sure, I'll do it. I was still conscientious in, making sure that it was fair to me and my time, that I wasn't getting ripped off or taken advantage of. And that's led to like building out an entirely new network. That's led to me being a casting director for a startup that does YouTube narration. Like, being able to say yes has a lot of power.
Mm-hmm.
I
Yeah.
wish I would have done it sooner, honestly.
Yeah. I totally agree. Yeah, I totally agree. Because like I used to be the same when, especially when I was younger. I'm old nowadays because I'm in my late 20s and stuff. People, just for full disclosure.
That's not that old, brother. It's not that old.
But when I was younger, I used to be very shy about things, and when new things that I just like, the unknown shows up, and I'm just like,
Yeah.
yeah, maybe not, maybe next time. And then as I grew up, I started learning, especially when I got involved in acting classes in college. I showed up late, and like I'll never forget this because I showed up late to my acting class. And I was one more day away from getting removed from the class, from getting dropped. So I show up
Yikes.
late, and I open the door, and I'm like, oh hey, there's no one here. Cool, except there it looks like your teacher's there. But before I did, I remember before I reached for that door, I was like, this is probably gonna change my life. But anyways, I'll still do it, whatever. I walk in there, see the teacher standing in the middle. I just walk over there, and I was like, "Hi," and she looked at me, and she said, "You're interrupting my class." And I looked to my right. There's like 20 people posted on the wall, and I was like, "Oh, oh, okay." I was like, okay." And obviously, since I had missed 2 classes, after that, I was able to talk to her, who then became a mentor, and
Nice.
she said, "Okay, I won't ding you if you don't take the assignment for this time around. But going forward, in order to get credit, you have to take the assignment. Okay?" I was like, all right. And she's like, what's your answer? After she had me talk to other people who had been with her. And I looked, I was like, and for that split second, I was like, if I say no to this, I'm probably going to keep saying no to other things that could probably enrich my life. And so I told her, I was like, I'll do it. So you sure? She's like, yeah, I'll do it. I failed completely, but I think it helped. It helped turn the course completely. It was worth it.
Yeah. Dude, for me, like, it's like, yeah, you know what? I'll do it. I spent the last year and a half staying away from narration. I don't like. I'm okay with my voice. I've learned to love my voice. It took
Mm-hmm.
me a while to do. But finally, I was like, yeah, okay, let me give it a shot. And it was a lesson hard. because I think I spent like 4 hours making this first narration
Right.
perfect. It was like chef's kiss. It was like in my book, I'm like, this is some of the best audio engineering work I've done. It's like
Yeah.
better than the series, and I sound amazing. I love this. And they listen to it for like 30 seconds, and they're like, yeah, your voice just isn't gonna work for this niche. I'm like, what? Huh?
The
and
prime
I
work for
learned
this.
right, exactly. And so I learned from that. I was like, okay, that's a really good lesson for me to have learned at that time was
Mm-hmm.
doesn't matter how perfect I think it is or how bad I think it is. What's really going to matter to the person on the other end of this is that what they're looking for?
Right.
And for me, I was like, okay, wow, all right. So my next narration was like an hour because I got a little bit in my head still.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, well, I don't want it to sound, too unprofessional. So you know, let me do a little bit of work on this and clean it up. And I send it, they're like, yeah, that's really good, but can you take all that engineering stuff off? We want you to sound natural.
Okay.
Okay. So after that, I'm like, okay, cool. I'm just not going to bother. I'm just going to do like basic declicking and send my stuff in.
Mm-hmm.
And now it's like, you know, bibbity bobbity bacon. I can do these things all day.
Mm-hmm.
But it's through that experience of learning by saying yes. You're always going to learn so much more by doing rather than just studying. Like
Right.
I've always been that way. Like if you want me to learn something, let me get my hands on it. Let me, figure out how to do it the way you're talking about and to kind of come up with a way that works for me.
Right.
And so, voiceover, there are just so many lessons out there, so many videos out there now, so many different webinars you can take. We have better access to coaches now than ever before through sites like Skills Hub.
Right.
If you're ever looking for affordable coaching, people go to Skills Hub.
Yeah.
It is amazing. It's a great community. It was created by Jennifer Hale. She has done an excellent job cultivating a really good culture.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Go ahead.
It's amazing. No, that's where I do my coaching through is through like Skills Hub. Well, now, thankfully that I've made it past that, $15 a year mark.
Yeah.
Now that I can actually, afford to make that investment in myself, I'm doing that. But
Right.
that really does start with the power of yes. So if you're out there and you're thinking like, I'm not getting anything, I'm not getting this kind of work, I don't have enough money for a demo, or I want a demo, or I can't get an agent. There is so much work out there right now that will just come from you pursuing people with the power of yes.
Right.
Like I know the urge is always there to go on, Fiverr. I personally don't advocate for it. I know that a lot of people make money on, good money on Fiverr.
Mm-hmm.
But I just personally feel like the way the industry has shifted, it's gone so much more into direct marketing.
It
And,
completely.
and if you have to build a relationship with a new client anyway, why do you want to let a company take 20% off the top of it?
Definitely not.
Right?
I heard 20%.
Right?
I was like, whoa, that's multiplicative right there, not additive.
Yeah. Yeah,
Mm.
exactly. And I was looking at that and I was like, wow, okay. And so, I did it and like I never booked anything on Fiverr. I put
Right.
together gigs and stuff, and eventually they expired. And at that point, um, I had just kind of gotten around through word of mouth, and I was getting more narrations and more work, consistently, thankfully.
Mm-hmm.
And it got to a point where I was like, okay, I now have an opportunity to build more direct relationships with more people that I don't have to, get a top end taken off of.
Right.
And then that allows me to give them a better performance too. Because then in the back of my head, I'm not going, okay, cool. So I'm going to give them, 20% less because I'm getting 20% less and they're getting 20% less. So everybody gets 20% less. It equals out, right? So for me, it's just being able to say, I don't feel like I'm getting shortchanged. I don't feel like I'm getting cheated over for the work that I'm doing,
Mm-hmm.
which then enables me to give like a really good solid. And it's, don't be afraid to say yes. Have the power to say yes, because that's when everything starts to click into place.
Yep. Definitely.
Because like I learned more in those first 3 narrations than I probably did in like the last 8 months.
Nice. And
Like,
that's
yeah.
good to bring up too, because like you approached me. So after we started chatting, it was like a month ago. you brought up to me is like that you were doing this casting thing, and so
Yeah.
normally I was the same way. I stayed away from narration, especially since after my complete L I took for the last narration I did when I first started, and I was just like, yeah, I'm not doing narration. It's not for me. But then you brought this up to me, and I had no idea it was narration, so I looked at it, and I was like, oh, it's narration. I'll do it. And so I did it, and I had a lot of fun with it. And the other thing I
Yeah.
also realized, I was like, I know who wrote these, okay, and I'm having fun with these. But it started really opening my wheelhouse and being able
Yeah.
to put to work stuff that I learned. Because my thing was
Yeah.
always, I gather stuff to do, and then after that, I then put it to work. Because when, like you said, you were going through coaching, and at the same time you were going through coaching, I was going through coaching with my coach, and after I got to a point where I started to really feel like, oh hey, I think I can start tackling commercials. I was like, okay, how? They're like all behind locked walls and stuff. I was like, well, I got to find something to do, and so
Yep.
I kept myself I kept myself occupied by being able to do that. And my teacher was like, that's a really good example. That's a really good idea. And like you said about Fiverr and things, at the time, in order to, that's when I started learning necessity is, that's when I started learning how important that was
Oh
necessity.
yeah, necessity is key.
Necessity is key.
You need that.
Yeah, I was like, how do I get my hands on commercial scripts that aren't just like off the web and can actually
Right.
have some kind of risk to them if I put myself out there. And so what I did was, and normally I don't advocate for P2Ps either, but at the time what I did was I got the Black Friday deal subscription from Voices, and I was like, oh, they got stuff here. So I was able to get an idea of what I can expect when I start going into those other places, as well as
Right.
a bunch of, as well as because it was like $100 for the whole year. I was getting access to scripts that I could work on with myself and workshop for like $10 a month. And then after that, when I got what I need from there, move on. And then that way it's like I don't just show up, I'm like, hi, I'm here. It's like, have you worked on anything? No. Have you, like, my skills don't just start dwindling away.
Yeah, no, and that was me too, because it's a completely different ball game when you sit down to do a project as opposed to I'm gonna spend, 5 minutes on this audition. I'm gonna spend, 10 minutes on this audition. If it's a big one, maybe I'll spend a little bit longer. But a majority of the time it's like, okay, cool. It's gonna be a one and done. I'm gonna send it off. I'm gonna forget about it. I'm not gonna dwell on it, or anxiety will just have me
Mm-hmm.
ripping my hair out.
Mm-hmm.
And so yeah, I that first narration, even though on paper it failed because that was never put to video, it never aired anywhere. To me, that was a huge success because that was me showing myself, yeah, you can do it. It kind of sucked. It was a process. They didn't like it, but that's not because you did anything wrong. You weren't a fit. And
Mm-hmm.
so that was a really good lesson to learn. And that gave me an opportunity to put everything to work in a longer time period as opposed to I'm gonna do like a 30-second practice script in a workout room,
Exactly.
you know, or I'm gonna do this 5 minute audition that I found on Twitter or Casting Call Club or VAC or any other number of places you can find casting calls these days.
Right.
Because those that a lot of people will say the audition is the job, and like sure, absolutely, that's a large part of it. If you can nail that audition, that's how you get booked, that's how you get work. But at the same time, that work is going to be so much more informative to your ability and toolkit than an audition ever could be.
Mm-hmm.
You might discover a cool voice or a unique voice by doing an audition, but then if you don't get to do anything with that voice, like sure, you've got that in your back pocket somewhere, but it's not refined, it's not developed because you didn't do anything with it.
Right.
It's like I'm a big advocate for, just do something. That's
Yeah.
why when you told me you were doing the podcast, I was so excited for you because, last year, um, really good friend of mine, Morgan, we're like, hey, we should meet up weekly. We should try to do like a YouTube series.
Mm-hmm.
We should write our own commercials and like produce our own commercials for each other just so we have something to do. And we did that for probably 6 months.
Right.
Never went anywhere. Never went anywhere. I don't think we had a single video that broke over like 200 views,
Mm-hmm.
but we we didn't do it for that. We did it so that we could say, if we're not finding that work, we're going to make that work.
Exactly.
We're going to build the frame so that, I love him to pieces. He's a great guy. He has a very different directing style than I do.
Right.
And so the one thing I learned at the end of that entire process was, okay, if I can direct him and be directed by him, I can probably work with a lot of people. And I know he felt the exact same way about me.
Uh-huh.
But it got to a point where that helped us build that relationship, build that trust, build out those skills. And then in October,
Mm-hmm.
was that? No, it was September. He's like, hey, you know what we should do? I'm like, what? It's like, we haven't done an episode in a while. I'm like, no, we haven't, because life got busy for a bit.
Right.
He's like, we should do like a Halloween special. I'm like, oh, that could be really fun. He's like, yeah, I'm thinking like, maybe a 5 or 10 minute short, just something really silly. I'm like, okay, cool. And I just like threw out this random idea,
Mm-hmm.
and he's like, yeah, that's really cool. The idea was something like, a group of friends find out they're on the naughty list, so they're going to go to, the North Pole and confront Santa and find out what's what.
Roll up on
And
him.
he's like, that's a really good idea. That could be a lot of fun. I'm like, cool. So let me sit down and let me start writing out this idea for this short.
Mm-hmm.
And then the short became a medium, and then the medium became a long, and then the long became a series. And it was absolutely crazy because we really did live by, if you're not doing something, if you can't find work, make work. So I wrote this thing, I sat down with him, he was my editor. We went through it line by line, piece by piece, refining it. And you learn a lot about being, a producer by doing something like that, because then it's like, it's a balance between what do I really want to present, as opposed to what my editor is telling me would or would not make sense, or would or would not fly.
Right.
And so I'm like, okay, I trust him. I've worked with him. He never led me wrong when we were doing our commercials and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And
Right.
so we get it all written out, and I'm like, okay, cool. Now what do we do? He's like, well, now turn it into an audio drama. I'm like, all right, bet, let's do it. And so I had kind of already started writing a lot of these characters with friends in mind that I was working with regularly. And, I called them up on Discord. I'm like, hey, so I'm doing this audio drama series. Here's a log line. Here's kind of a rough impression of what your character looks like. Are you down?
Mm-hmm.
And it was like an immediate yes from everybody, which I'm so blessed and so thankful for. That I just have amazing friends that were willing to say, that sounds like so much fun. Let's do it. I'm like, oh, I can't pay you. Is that okay? And they're like, we're friends and this looks like fun. Let's do it. And I'm like, oh, thank God. Yes. Okay. I think being able to do it with people that supported me in the idea and the vision, and that were willing to be awesome for free because of, again, those relationships that were cultivated made it possible. So we sat down, we did live directed sessions with everybody. We got all of our different takes. I would sit down, I'd split all the files, I'd get everything organized. Thankfully, everybody was really nice about sending me most of their files already split, which some people will do, and some people will. That's like that's kind of like a debated topic in VO, whether you split your files or not. But then I would go through and I would do my picks, and Morgan and I both use Reaper, thankfully. Right. So the great thing, if you're working on an audio drama series or a project, and you're a producer and you're working with other people, or other co-directors or producers, having the same system really helps.
Right.
Because I could just do my selection of picks and then just send that entire project to him. He would pull it up on his side. Everything was already there and layer everything, to the best of my ability. I would kick it back over to him. He's my sound guy. Morgan is amazing at sound betting. If I've got a fine ear for engineering, this guy has an insane ear for sound design. So he goes in and he just worked beautiful magic on this show. And then he would send it back over. I'd get it all, balanced out so that everything, was mixed well.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and then I did all the music and stuff, all the backtracking. And then we like put this together, and it was this constant, back and forth, the need for communication, and constantly like juggling between, I have to deal with my writer's brain, and writer brain and reader brain are two totally different things, folks. The amount of times I had my cast come to me and be like, people don't talk that way, right? I'm like, you know what? You are absolutely right. Let's let's make adjustments. And we just really, kind of nailed things down. And then that was like a really quick back and forth and all of this stuff going on. So many different moving pieces, two of us. And from like the middle of October until the end of December was our production pipeline, and we got the entire first season. And it was insane. I will never do it again. Believe me, I will never ever sign on to that kind of like a production pipeline again, because it was crazy. It was a lot of sleepless nights, a lot of staying up until 7, 8 a.m. getting stuff done.
Right.
But just doing that project taught us all a lot. It taught us how to be able to pivot, how to be able to make a change, how to be able to do pickups because something just didn't play right. A lot of times the pickups I needed was just because the lines weren't playing well with the engineering or with the sound bed or music bed, because too many frequencies overlapping cause distortion and feedback.
Right.
So there was just like so much that everybody says, this is what goes into voiceover, this is what goes into that, this is what goes into, this or that topic or this field. And being able to sit down and say, all right, cool, now let me experience that. And being able to do it in a low pressure environment because it was our production. I don't think if I had tried to produce this for somebody else that it would have been as good, because I would have freaked out the entire I would have been a nervous wreck, right?
This
But
is a lot of work too.
yeah, it was an insane amount of work. I may have overwritten a few things, as people, especially my crew and cast, have very frequently pointed out, especially now that I'm writing season 2, so I know
Right.
not what to do there. But like our last episode was over 50 minutes.
Okay.
That's a lot for an audio drama episode.
Yeah.
That's like, it's one thing if it's like an audiobook or, a narration, but we sound bedded that thing. It was fully acted. It was fully engineered. I scored that entire episode from beginning to end. Was such a nerve-wracking experience because that was the first time I had ever actually scored something. Before it was kind of like, let me mix up a track and hope it works. But this was like scoring beginning to end, and I'm like, oh my god, is it going to work? Are people going to like it? Is everybody else going to like it? Is my co-director, like, is Morgan going to like it? Like, if I had to do that in a professional setting, I probably would have melted down. But yeah, it was. But now that I've done it, though, now that I have that kind of comparison, I know what to expect when I book another project like that.
Definitely.
Or, if somebody reaches out and says, hey, we want to hire you to produce a show, like, we can say, cool, let's talk about specifics and details, because we could do that.
Right.
But that, you were talking about the award nomination.
Yes. Which
we-
speaking of that, so first off, congratulations, and
Thank you.
And second off, like, I found out because one of our friends, Drew Morrison, who was in a recent episode earlier, you can check out. He posted it because it was for the Voice One Awards. So tell us more about that.
Oh man, so he's my accountability buddy. He and I work together probably 2 or 3 times a week, where we get up at the butt crack of dawn to get our days going. And he told me about the One Voice, the conference and everything. And I'm like, okay. At the time, I was like, wow, that's really cool. Like, I made $15 in voiceover last year. I'm probably not going to go. But thankfully, I had enough good fortune to be able to get my finances squared away with.
Right.
And to get my ticket and go. And he's like, hey, so, you're going to put your stuff forward, right? Like, what are you talking about? It's like, well, they do like an award thing every year, and you can, put forth stuff into these categories. I'm like, man, I don't know. Like, I don't really have anything to really put forward. He's like, well, you and Morgan are doing your own demos now, so put in your demo. I'm like, okay, cool, I can do that. He's like, I'm gonna put forth, something from Coco.
Mm-hmm.
Coco slash Biscotti is the character that he voiced in For Goodness Sake, A Christmas Adventure. He
Right.
did a beautiful job. It's like, yeah, I'm gonna put forth some Coco stuff. You should do something. And he's telling you it was a good show. I'm like, well, I thought it turned out well, but I don't necessarily like I had faith in it as the producer and creator. But for me as an actor, it's like, that was my first time doing like combat reactions and fight scenes and things like that. And I was like, okay, cool. So yeah, I guess I can, cut together something and put it forth. And he's like, yeah, you should definitely do it. Like you've got nothing to lose.
Mm-hmm.
And so I trusted my accountability buddy and I did it. And I didn't think anything of it. I was like, if something happens, it happens. I'm sure there's going to be like a ton of amazing people because this is, all different aspects of the industry where people can submit samples and stuff. So this was specifically for best character performance in animation, and they actually opened it up to audio dramas this year, which was just really super exciting, which is why we were able to do it. And so I was on a call with him the other day because again, accountability buddies early in the AM we're working, and I take a break to do narration. He takes a quick break to do something else. And then he just comes back and he's like this really excited, like golden retriever.
Mm-hmm.
He's got like all of this amazing, like excited puppy dog energy. And I'm like, what is it? He's like, dude, the nominations came out. I'm like, okay, cool. He's excited. That means he probably got nominated.
Mm-hmm.
He's like, dude. And he like sent me the screenshot. And I'm like, yeah, his name, alphabetically is at the top.
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, that is really amazing because it's like Coco Biscotti. It's got the show name, produced by Luke Trusty. I'm like, yay, my name is on the board for something.
Mm-hmm.
That's amazing. He's like, no, dude, keep reading. And I got down. I'm like, I was shell shocked, dude. Like honestly, like I was already over the stars just to have my name like on that announcement
Mm-hmm.
anywhere. Um, but then to see like there was an actual nomination, everybody that submitted, and it blew my mind. I'm like, everybody's like, are you really excited? Are you really excited? I'm like, I am a combination of excited and curious.
Mm-hmm.
I guess curious. Like I have faith in the product. I love the show. I loved every bit of it. But I'm like, there are some really top notch names on there. There are some people that have won Emmys. There
Mm-hmm.
are production houses behind all this. And I'm like, this was like my first project, and I learned a lot of stuff. There were some parts that I would completely change and redo if I could. Like, are you guys sure? Like,
Mm-hmm.
do I need to email, the One Voice conference guys and be like, hey, was there a typo? Was I meant to be up there? But then I had to kind of remind myself I had to do a check. I was like, you know what? You did the writing, you did the production, you did the mixing. That one sequence that I sent in for submission, just that one sequence was probably the better part of, between Morgan and I combined, about 30 hours worth of work
Right.
in terms of like recording and stuff. And so I had to do that hard check for myself. I was like, you know what? If you're there, be proud of the fact that you're there, recognize the honor that you are there, be humble because there are a lot of people that submitted that didn't make it on the list.
Right.
And I'm like, if I am on that list, that means that there were enough people that listened to that and enjoyed it enough and said that needs to be on the list. And
Mm-hmm.
that is, it's such a huge honor. And again, I'm still really excited, but there is still that little voice in the back of my head going, it was a typo, waiting for the email. And I have to constantly tell that little voice, okay, be quiet. I know, you're just my insecurities trying to pick at me.
Mm-hmm.
And it is really important, especially with what we do, to just make that voice be quiet.
Right.
Because if, again, the thing I learned with that narration, going back to that, is that it doesn't matter how good you think your performance is or how amazing you think you are. It really is up to the guys on the other side.
Mm-hmm.
It really is up to them to go, yeah, this is perfect. It's not, we'll fix that audio on the back end. That's what we pay the engineers for.
Right.
And so, yeah, like a couple of people have reached out. Everybody's been really super excited about it. I again, I'm still like this kind of like, uh, but at first I was like, I'll submit to it. I'm gonna be there for the conference. I didn't have plans on going to the award ceremony
Mm-hmm.
because I didn't plan on submitting anything. But she was like, nah, dad, just do it. I'm like, okay, I did. And I'm like, okay, cool. I'm not gonna worry about going to the award ceremony. I'm just gonna take it easy and like work for the next month and
Mm-hmm.
relax. I'll do a little bit of light exercise here and there, tone up a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, oh my God, I've been nominated. All right, like, dude, I have changed my diet. I'm walking every day. I'm
Uh-huh.
exercising. I'm working out like 2 hours of the Bowflex every day.
Yeah.
I'm like, I am so grateful for this nomination, but oh my God, my muscles hurt.
It's like just cranking that weight and things because I want to start getting back to the gym as
Yeah.
well. But no, again, it's like congratulations for your nomination. And the Voice One Awards happens when again? I believe.
This is August, like 10th,
Okay,
10th or
cool.
13th. Yeah.
Yeah, that's good because this episode right now, for those listening, has been recorded in July, so it should be out. So it should be ready by then. But no,
Oh, that's cool.
that's again, congratulations on that. Like I saw that, I was like, I see Drew up there, and then I was like, I see Luke too. Like I was, I had to like reread this because I'm like, wait, how are they listening?
So
to
did I.
this? I was like, okay. I was like, all right then. So that was. I'm actually glad we were working on scheduling this to begin with, because
Yeah.
like I have a good half and half of guests that either I had to ask. I have more guests that I've already approached with and said yes to doing this podcast than I do
Mhm.
for people to ask. And I'm like, okay, I actually had to stop looking for people to invite because I was like, wait, I got to do the editing and all this on my
Yeah,
own.
yeah. And that's crazy, but again, that's the beauty of if you can't find work, make work, because
Hmm.
how else are you going to get exposed to that, right?
Exactly.
Like I guarantee if you do this for a long time, and you should, because this is great. It's a great way to have people come on and give back to the community a little bit. But the more you do it, the longer you do it, the better you're going to get. And you're probably going to look back at this next year and go, "Oh, what was I doing?"
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. And speaking of like going back to what you were saying about making your own work, like
Yeah.
at some point, like we were just talking about, like some opportunities that happen in the industry are
Yep.
about as rare as a meteor hitting Earth. But
Yep.
and the thing is that we're my teacher loved to crack down on my mentor loved to crack down on us about this, about instant gratification, and that we see the end result of something, like the end result of a successful audio drama that you did, or the end result of a good video game. We
Yeah.
see that result, and it's like, oh yeah, I want to be a part of that because the end result itself is so good. But we don't see everything behind that and the work it takes to just even get in front of there. Versus, so the expectation is
Yeah.
usually set at, because it looks like that, it should be that easy. And then we dive in, and the majority of us dive in and are like, wow, it's a lot harder than we thought by default. Versus
Yeah.
the whole meteor hitting, and it's like, what do we do? It's first those who are committed and they're like, okay, this is a bit more than I thought, but I still want to stick with it. And as we start finding out, it's like, what do we do? Making your own content,
Yep.
making your own content, keeping yourself occupied. If you can pay for coaching with a good coach, doing that, getting to know other people. It's like you start finding stuff to do, and then your focus goes from instant gratification to being in the moment of what it is you're learning.
Yeah, that was really us. Like we never really did it for instant gratification. For us it was really, this is the kind of stuff we want to do. Like we want to get into video games, we want to get into animation. We need to be able to say, we've done something, right?
Hmm.
Like on a resume, we need some kind of credit to say, yeah, we've been in something. And so that was kind of like one of the big things behind this too, was we wanted to put out a good product
Hmm.
that would look good on a resume, or people might go and listen to, or at the very least we get some great samples from. And we set up our production deadline, and it was only the last episode that was late by I think 2 days.
Right.
Everything else was on time. And it does get to that point where you have to look at a situation and go, okay, cool. Like, I can't tell you, I was religiously checking the view count on the first episode after I posted it. Like, religiously, everybody. Like, I was like, every 15 or 20 minutes, like, I'm on Red Circle. That's my hosting platform. Let's refresh. Let's refresh. Let's refresh.
Like, refresh.
Yeah. It finally got to a point where, you know, my wife was like, are you still looking at that? I'm like, I need to know. Like, I want to know how it's received and what the reception is. And she's like, well, did you like it? I'm like, yeah, I think it was really good. She's like, well, I liked it. Everybody else that you've talked to has listened to it has liked it, right? I'm like, yeah. She's like, okay, that's enough.
Yeah.
Just be happy with the quality that turned out. I'm like, you know what? Okay. So I started clicking, I don't know, maybe 15% less for the first 3 episodes. But yeah, it eventually got to that point where it's like, okay, I'm tired. There's not a lot of fuel left in the tank. This needs to be done. I want this to be done, not so that I can sleep, but because I want to share this with everybody. And that kept me going. That kept me going for finalizing everything. And it's actually really, really kind of interesting because, and I bring this up because the last episode that we did, that's where I took the sample from that was nominated for the character performance for one voice. The cutoff was December 31st at midnight for your submissions to count. And because we were so, passionate about this project and getting it done and making it a priority and wanting it to be great, we beat that deadline by like an hour and a half.
Ooh.
Yeah, it's like if we had delayed, or if I would have had like a bad day, or if I would have woken up one day and go, I'm just so tired, I don't have the capacity to get behind the microphone today or in the booth today, I wouldn't have been nominated because the sample wouldn't have been there.
Right.
So really being able to look at a project and go, this, you have to motivate yourself. And I tell this to a lot of, especially younger voice actors, or newer voice actors. There's no magical silver bullet. There's no magical remedy that's going to fix things for you or make you a successful voice actor. Really what it is you've got to decide for yourself that this is what you want to do, and you got to do it. Because ultimately, at the end of the day, nobody is going to make or break or save your VO career but you. And that was the lesson that show taught me. And then taking that and going, yeah, it's, a lot of it is like, manifest destiny. Like, if you want good things to happen for you, you have to make good things happen for you.
Yeah, start working at it.
Exactly. And just do. So for everybody listening to this, or watching this, if you can't find work, make work. You don't have to be the best writer in the world. You don't have to be the best voice actor in the world. You don't have to have any engineering skills or music skills. You don't have to be the best at anything other than being the best version of you that you can be, the most authentic version that you can be, and just making your own work.
Yeah.
Because that's gonna inform you so much more than anything else you're gonna do probably this year.
Yeah, I totally agree, because we're approaching July 4th, and about last year in July 4th, I remember sitting on a hilltop watching at like 12 at night with a bunch of other people watching fireworks, which was great. And I was like, cool. I want to do so. Fortunately, I wasn't depressed or anything. I was just like, okay, I'm enjoying myself here, but I want to do something for I want to take more steps in my career. What do I do? I went through training and things, and I'm very grateful for it. But like you said, I really did start thinking. I was like, what else can be done? What else can I do as a person to start getting myself out there? And then as the year kept going on, I came up with ideas that I wanted to implement, that I had the power to do. versus
Yeah.
thinking about what I can't do at the time. And some of those things were I networked with other people. Um,
Mm-hmm.
I was networking with other people, meeting other people, having fun with other people, just really chilling, seeing where I can assist more with other people
Right.
and their groups within this, learning myself more. And then eventually the podcast came up because I remember I had the idea. I was like, what if I ran a podcast that either did gameplay, and I'm still, for those listening, you'll probably see different kinds of videos for the podcast episodes. But I was like, what if I ran something like that? And then after that, I looked, I was like, oh, wait, I know a bunch of people that would probably be cool with this if I asked them. And so I went with that. And like you said, are you happy with it? Because I went from one of my videos, because we do cover gameplay here, it
Mm-hmm.
hit 7K. I was like, whoa, what the hell happened here? And sure enough, I was on that refresh button, like, let's see. Okay, go up to
Right.
8K. Okay,
Exactly.
okay. And then as it started slowing down, I was like, maybe I should. I was like, yeah, I'm happy with it. And it came from that point of acceptance, like you just mentioned. It's like, I'm happy with it. It's good enough. I did everything I can. So
Yeah.
here we go. We're good right there. And I just went on to other things. And after putting in the work to do some of these episodes for the podcast, meet with other people, it's like, yeah, I'm happy with it as long as I.
Right. Like when you sit down to make your own content, first off for yourself, define what it is you want to do with your content. Decide what your purpose is. For
Right.
us, it was we want practical experience, and we can't book that right now. It's kind of like a catch-22. Well, we want to do that, but nobody's going to book us until we have experience doing that. But we can't get experience doing that until we do it. But we can't book it, just so on and so forth.
Right.
So we were never worried about, I want to be a social and like a social media influencer,
Mm-hmm.
or I want to make a crap ton of money on YouTube through advertising, or I want this to blow up. Like I want studios to approach me and say, like, I want to buy this. I mean, hey, production houses,
Mm-hmm.
uh, networks, if you're listening, call me.
Yeah. 100%.
Now that call me, now that I know that it's good and it's a solid idea, contact me. Joking aside, that's really the big thing is decide for yourself what your purpose is.
Mm-hmm.
And if your purpose is to put content out there so you have something to do, something to practice with, take pride in that. Like we last year when Morgan and I did our mock commercials and stuff, we're
Right.
like, this is really good. This is really good. And we were joking about it. We're like,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, when we stopped doing it because of time, we actually had a conversation like, do we leave stuff up on our channel or do we take it down?
Right.
And he's like, leave it up, leave it up. I'm like, well, that might look really bad on us if, a year and a half or something, we're booking, we're doing really good stuff, and somebody goes back and looks at this stuff. He's like, no, let them look and go, oh wow, they were really bad back then, and they're really good now. I was like, you know what? All right, 100%. I trust you, brother. I trust you 100%. And so the last couple months, we've been getting like memories on Facebook because we posted this stuff. And I'm listening to some of this stuff and I'm going, oh my God, how did I think that was good? And so just having, even if you get one view on a video, but you have that video as a reflection point 6 months from now, and you can recognize how much you've improved in that 6 month time period, it doesn't matter if you're that only view. That's the one view that counts. Because
Definitely.
then you can see where you were and recognize where you're at and then figure out what you did in that process and then you can build a future process to hit your future goals.
Definitely. And like you said, production houses, and the trend of direct marketing. Because one of the people that I currently work with, from UVT, she's big advocate in direct marketing. That you want to have your materials ready and then pitch yourself out directly to clients versus,
Oh yeah.
especially if you don't have an agent at the moment. It's like either you're gonna sit on your hands or you're gonna do something.
And I know a lot of voice actors that have, you know, multiple agent
Mm-hmm.
and they still do their own direct marketing.
Right.
There's this kind of like big, I don't really want to call it like, myth or anything like that or superstition about the industry. But a lot of people look at agents and go, that's like the end all be all goal is to
Mm-hmm.
have an agent. Don't get me wrong. Agents are great. I personally, like, after being a casting director, I recognize how undervalued agents and casting directors are without a shadow of a doubt.
Right.
Because, like, I look at the stuff I do on a daily basis, and I'm like a small fry, dude. Like,
Mm-hmm.
I'm a casting director for a small company, and I can't even imagine what all these agents and casting directors have to like go through on a daily basis for
Mm-hmm.
like Atlas or CESD or any of the big names. But yeah, there's this big like preconceived notion that if you have an agent that that's all you ever need.
Right.
But you ask any major voiceover, don't be afraid to ask them, hey, what percentage of your workload comes through your agent?
Mm-hmm.
And that percentage is a lot smaller than I think a lot of people realize.
Definitely. It's like at that point you got to do even more than you had originally done beforehand, and it's good to have that knowledge to know it's not, you can't just like dump it all on your agent like, here, book me work. It's more at that point you now have a second person on your team who does have that ability, but you got to show them, hey, while you do your thing, what can I do in order to help this relationship work, or just start
Yeah.
doing that.
Yeah, and really the big thing is that like when I'm listening to roster submissions for people that are interested in doing this short form narration,
Mm-hmm.
the very first thing I listen for is investment.
Right.
That's the very first thing I'm listening. A lot of people will say, well, I'm going to listen for the voice, I'm going to listen to this, I'm going to listen for that. The first thing I listen for is investment.
Right.
How much has this person invested in their craft? Okay, that guy sounds like he's recording on top of a power substation. I should probably send him like a tinfoil hat, and he probably is not safe to record this.
It's a
Um,
rubber.
yeah, I've gotten a few submissions like that. I've gotten people that sound like, they're in a wind tunnel or an echo chamber.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, I like their voices, but what that tells me right there, they have not made an investment in themselves, either monetarily in terms of treatment or space, or in terms of coaching or classes,
Right.
or their mic technique is off, or that's what I listen for. I've gotten people that have a little bit more background noise than I would like, but I can hear the investment they've already made in themselves.
Mm-hmm.
So I will never invest my time, money, or resources into a talent that has not invested in themselves first.
Agreed. And I think
Don't, yeah.
go ahead.
I was going to say, don't make me be the person that invests in you first.
Yeah.
Invest in yourself first. And
Mm-hmm.
that's the biggest reason why I say if you can't find work, make work, invest in yourself, because believe me when I tell you, that casting director, that agent, they will hear the difference immediately. It's not going to be your space. It's not going to be the echo. It's not going to be the quality of the voice. It's not going to be all of the other things that you think it's going to be. They will be able to tell that you have invested time and effort and energy into this craft for yourself.
Yep. Yeah, and that's a very important lesson to really just learn in life. Like, don't
Yeah.
expect other people to invest. Like my mother's always telling me this when she gets a chance. But what she had said is, you want to make sure you're putting your best self forward before
Yeah.
anything, because no one else is gonna take you seriously unless you take yourself seriously.
Yeah, like I love helping new voice actors get a foot in the door with something to get
Mm-hmm.
practical experience, but I'm not going to bankroll your experience if you haven't bankrolled a portion of it yourself, if
Yep,
that makes sense.
definitely. Now this
It's
is
like go ahead.
go ahead, go ahead.
No, I was about to say it's like a 401k at a company. Your
Yeah.
company matches the investment that you make. That's why, you don't work at a company for 2 weeks and get like a full 401k benefit plan.
Mm-hmm.
You have to showcase that you're willing to make that investment in time and effort and resources yourself first. And that's really what goes into a lot of this too.
Right. Yeah, definitely. Now this is the important stuff that I wanted to bring to the podcast when it gets shipped out,
Mhm.
to let people know, hey, 9 times out of 10, you're gonna start off having to find your own way. And let's meet people who are down in the trenches who have already like found something that works for them and is working well. So let's share their stories, like yours, like Drew's, like Morgan's, and everyone else. So
Yeah.
it's good. Is that
Yeah,
it's
and
good.
like I'm a small fry. Like when it comes to, like casting and directing, I've got the one honestly that one credit doing this show under my name in terms of like production and directing. Uh, I've only been a casting director for a couple months,
Hmm.
but I can tell you from like my perspective as a small fry, like not even being anywhere close to being on the radar compared to a lot of these huge agencies. If that's the kind of thing that I'm noticing as a small fry, what are the big guys noticing?
Hmm.
Right? Like if if I'm like, yeah, this is ooh, that's not the best. Um, what are the big name brand guys gonna say? And so
Right.
that's kind of like a really good perspective that I wanted to share too, is that like, yeah, I'm not this huge end all be all guy, but if I can, notice it as at a base level where I'm at, I'm starting to get a much better idea of what casting directors and agents look for having done that. And it's a lot of it is just not even the things we think.
Yeah, definitely.
It's
But again,
crazy.
it is.
It's
Again,
very
Luke,
crazy.
thank Luke, thank you for like sharing your experience, what you're seeing
Oh,
out there,
absolutely.
and things.
Thank you for
It's
giving me a chance to give back.
yeah, no problem, man. Thanks. So before we wrap things up, where can
Sure.
people find you and your projects?
You can find me at my website, www.luketrusty.com. I've got all my social links on there. There's, a contact form if you want to drop me a message for something. Go for it. I don't typically do a lot of casting through my website. That's mostly for people wanting to book me for gigs. I am present on like, if you're not part of the VAC Discord, I'd highly recommend it.
Mm-hmm.
If you're just starting out and you need a good one-stop shop to kind of get your feet wet,
Mm-hmm.
definitely go with Steve Bloom with Bloombox Studios.
Mm-hmm.
That is an excellent way to get going on all of this. There's an unofficial Discord that goes part and parcel with that. You can kind of find me there lurking on occasion.
Mm-hmm.
um, but yeah, like I do have a roster call open on VAC and casting calls. So if you are interested in doing getting your feet wet into narration and you've done that investment in yourself, don't be afraid to submit. I check it regularly.
Yeah, sounds good. So once again, Luke, thank you for coming on the show. Thanks. I wish
Yeah.
you the best for the nominations
Thank you.
and just everything in general.
Well, thank you very much, dude. This has been a lot of fun and it was great catching up.
Yeah, you too. Hit that like, subscribe button. You can find all of Luke's information in the description below, and I'll see you guys around.